So they're watching L24 Midnight News streaming live from the capital Algiers. And coming up next in our news program. Acknowledging the Arab countries for their support for Algeria's endeavor for Syria's return to the Arab League, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune renews his commitment on the ongoing efforts to complete the Palestinian reconciliation. As heavy fighting continues in Sudan, UN humanitarian warned that more than 1 million people have been forced to flee for their lives. Several Palestinians were suffocated Friday evening after inhaling tear gas fired at them during confrontation with Zionist forces in the occupied West Bank. And on the first day of the G7 summit in Japan, US and partners announced new sanctions aimed at punishing Russia's continuous military operation in Ukraine. Hello again and welcome. The Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune called for mobilization of Arab financing energies to assist countries of the region and enable them to overcome what he called difficult international circumstances. President Tebboune, in his speech delivered on his behalf by the Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman at the opening of the 32nd session of the Council of the League of Arab States at the summit level in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, announced that Algeria will organize this month the first scientific conference on food security in the Arab world to come up with scientific proposals and concrete projects that support food security for the Arab peoples.
At the Arab level, Algeria will organize next month the first scientific conference on food security in the Arab world in presence of eminent Arab experts and specialists that will culminate in scientific and practical proposals as well as concrete projects to be adopted and implemented to strengthen the food security of our peoples.
President Tebboune affirmed that Algeria has used its diplomacy in service of the Palestinian cause by continuing to mobilize support to expand the base of international recognition of the State of Palestine in order to gain a full membership at the UN Council.
وفاءً لمسؤولياتنا التاريخية إزاء الشعب الفلسطيني الشقيق.
In fulfillment of our historical responsibilities towards the brotherly Palestinian people and in implementation of the centrality of the Palestinian cause, which is in the hearts of Algerian people, Algeria has deployed diplomatic efforts at the service of this central cause. We have continued efforts at the United Nations level to mobilize the necessary support to expand the platform of international recognition of the State of Palestine and its fully fledged membership in the United Nations, in coordination with all Arab brothers. On the occasion of the celebration of the World Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, we called on the international community to assume its historic, political, legal, moral, and humanitarian responsibilities towards the brotherly Palestinian people.
And on Syria's return to the League of Arab States, President Tebboune welcomed Damascus' restoration of its seat in the League and acknowledged Arab countries that supported Algeria's endeavor, led by Saudi Arabia.
The motto of reunification was materialized in the recovering of sisterly Syria, its seat in the League of Arab States, thanks to the relentless efforts that have been deployed. The return of Syria occurs at a special moment for the Algerian people, since it coincides with the commemoration of the massacres of May 8, 1945, and I would like to highly praise the return of Syria among its brothers, thanking all the countries that backed Algeria's efforts, foremost of which is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
And regarding the Sudanese crisis, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune called for a return to the peaceful path to resolve the deep crisis in Al-Khartoum away from any external interference.
Brotherly Sudan is witnessing an explosion of violence among the children of the same people. After we have welcomed the framework agreement aimed at turning the page on the transition period, following the rapid deterioration of the security situation resulting from the continued armed conflict among the Sudanese brothers, Algeria hastened to send letters to the Secretary General of the United Nations, the acting chairman of the African Union, the president of the Comoro Islands, and the executive secretary of the Committee on Development, IGAD, in order to quickly intervene to stop the bloodshed and go back to the peace process for the resolution of the conflict in Sudan, away from any interference in the Sudanese internal affairs.
لحل الأزمة السودانية العميقة بعيداً عن أي تدخل خارجي في الشؤون الداخلية السودانية.
Also, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune expressed Algeria's satisfaction with the signs of rapprochement in the Arab relations with Turkey and Iran, hoping that this will be reflected in resolving the region's crises.
لطالما دعت الجزائر لا سيما خلال القمة العربية السابقة.
Algeria has always called, especially during the Arab Summit, for using dialogue to establish constructive geopolitical relations with neighboring countries with which we share religious, historic, and civilizational ties, in addition to the geographical element. In this context, we express our satisfaction at the improvement that occurred through the rapprochement, marking the Turkish-Iranian relations, which we wish will lead to an improvement in the settlement of the region's crises and its stability, in addition to decreasing volatility, thus opening the way for cooperation and partnership prospects and paving the way for peace in the region and in some member countries, notably in brotherly Yemen, as we commend all the efforts made to definitively settle this crisis and alleviate the sufferings of the brotherly Yemeni people.
لتسوية هذه الأزمة بصفة نهائية ورفع المعاناة عن الشعب اليمني الشقيق.
And on the matter of modernization of joint Arab action, the Algerian president described the efforts as inevitable, stressing the need to accelerate the activation of the turf reform process to face the challenges posed at the regional and international levels.
لا يمكن الحديث عن الأوضاع السائدة في منطقتنا العربية بمعزل عما يشهده العالم.
We cannot talk about the current situation in the Arab world without talking about what happens in the rest of the world, notably the deep changes and accelerated developments. These are the first signs of a new multipolar world order that will succeed the unipolar previous order. This situation, with its various complications and repercussions, requires from us to strengthen cooperation and work as a united bloc, based on the principle of common fate, to play an active role in determining new balances in order to preserve our common interests. We have the necessary skills and means that allow us to claim a preferential place to participate in drawing the contour of a better future for our peoples.
مكانة مرموقة للمساهمة في رسم معالم مستقبل أفضل لشعوبنا.
Arab leaders and heads of states praised Algeria's successful, distinguished and responsible presidency of the League of Arab States in the 31st edition and its endeavors for Arab reunification.
وأنها لمناسبة أيضا في هذا المقام.
It is an opportunity to extend my thanks to my brother, His Excellency President Abdelmajid Tebboune, President of the Brotherly People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, for his presidency of the summit with a high sense of responsibility in achieving reunification, and thanks God, the reunification was achieved.
تم لم الشمل.
أتوجه بالشكر والعرفان.
I extend my thanks and gratitude to my brother, His Excellency President Abdelmajid Tebboune, President of the Brotherly People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, for his successful presidency of the previous summit.
I extend my thanks and appreciation to President Abdelmajid Tebboune for the relentless and special efforts he made during his presidency of the previous summit.
Closing the Arab Summit file and moving on to a different matter, the National Unity Government in Libya has reached an agreement with the United Nations envoy to form joint teams aimed at implementing preliminary programs for the upcoming elections in the country. Following a meeting at the mission headquarters in Tripoli, both sides reviewed the perspectives and agreed on formation of these teams. In Africa, still Sudan's head of the Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, issued a constitutional decree on Friday dismissing Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hamiditi, from his position as deputy head of the Transitional Sovereignty Council. This move comes amid renewed battles between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces. Hussein Brikan.
Peace remains elusive as the battles between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces intensify, particularly in the capital city. The clashes have claimed the lives of 18 individuals, including women and children, and caused injuries to many in Niyala, a city in western Sudan. These conflicts have also led to the displacement of a significant number of people seeking safety in other areas. The renewed fighting comes in the wake of a previously agreed-upon ceasefire, which quickly collapsed, reigniting hostilities, a violation strongly condemned by the United Nations humanitarian envoy Martin Griffiths. These battles occur amid escalating differences between the two military factions, especially following al-Burhan's constitutional decree sacking Hamiti from his position as deputy head of the Sovereignty Council. Additionally, Malik Agar has been appointed as the new vice president of the Sudanese Sovereignty Council.
Today, May 19, 2023, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, chairman of the Sovereignty Council, issued a constitutional decree appointing Malik Agar as the vice president of the Transitional Sovereignty Council. The General Secretariat of the Sovereignty Council and relevant state authorities have been directed to implement this constitutional decree.
The situation in Sudan offers little hope for an end to the crisis, as the specter of war continues to loom. Al-Burhan's recent decision to dismiss Hamiti from his position as deputy head of the Transitional Sovereignty Council only further exacerbates the conflict, with civilians ultimately bearing the brunt of its consequences.
In the same line of thought, more than 1 million people have been displaced as a result of the ongoing conflict in Sudan. According to the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, this figure includes approximately 25,000 refugees who have sought shelter in other nations, along with around 843,000 individuals internally displaced within Sudan. In the Middle East now, clashes erupted between Palestinian residents and Zionist occupation forces in various areas of the occupied West Bank on Friday. The occupation forces arrested several Palestinians during their incursion into these regions. Clashes coincide with the anti-settlement rallies and a rejection of the so-called flag march in the occupied Al-Quds. Several injuries were reported as settlers attacked Palestinians near the Lions Gate in Al-Quds during their incursion into Al-Ghazali Sikwa area. An intense fighting has erupted in the city of Bakhmut during the last few days. Despite the setbacks, Ukrainian troops are pressing forward with their target advance in months, while Ukraine President vows to continue the counteroffensive until Crimea is reintegrated. Sufyan Kantouri.
The city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine has become an epicenter of intensified fighting between Russian and Ukrainian forces. Russia's defense ministry has claimed that its troops successfully repaired the surge of attempted attacks directed toward the city of Solidar by Ukrainian forces that were using over 1,000 troops and around 40 tanks. For his part, the founder of the Wagner military group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, expressed doubt that Bakhmut would fall into his mercenary forces within the next 2 days, as Ukrainian soldiers held their ground in the makeshift fortress located in the southern part of the city.
I am officially informing everyone. Bakhmut has not been taken yet. There is a district called Samolyot. It's like an impregnable fortress from a bed of multi-story buildings in the southwest of Bakhmut, where incredibly heavy battles are going on now. So Bakhmut is not like to be fully captured tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So I have a request. Happiness loves silence. Let us finish the job.
Despite facing setbacks in their offensive, Ukrainian forces have continued with their largest advance in Bakhmut in months. For his part, President Zelensky expressed his commitment to pushing forward with the Ukrainian counter-offensive, assuring that we will not stop at this point and will extend all the way to Crimea. Zelensky vowed to reintegrate Crimea into Ukraine as soon as possible.
Що б не робила Росія, її агресію чекає поразка.
Russia will not be able to steal Crimea or any other part of our country. We are preparing to reintegrate Crimea. I signed the decree of the Advisory Council on the reintegration and the occupation of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. It's all about specific actions to return our lands to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry has been actively encouraging its soldiers for their efforts in Ukraine. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu visits troops stationed in Ukraine's Zaporizhia region, personally acknowledging their dedication and loyalty. Shoigu awarded his soldiers for their service a recognition of their accomplishments on the battlefield.
These are important awards. It's a high praise of your military duty. I thank you for this. I hope you will continue serving our country faithfully and loyally for the good of our people. I congratulate you. Take care of yourselves.
The situation in Bakhmut remains tense, with both sides engaged in fierce combat. The conflicting claims and actions for both the Russian and Ukrainian forces indicate the severity of the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. The international community continues to monitor the situation closely, hoping for a resolution that can bring a lasting peace to the region.
In related matter, and at the summit in Japan, G7 leaders agreed on imposing new sanctions on Russia. Leaders of the group of 7 also sought to reduce trade reliance on China, stressing members are prepared to build constructive and stable relations with Beijing. Nabil Khazino on Watford.
Around the table on day one, the group of 7 spoke with one voice to denounce once again the conflict in Ukraine and to tighten sanctions on Russia. The sanctions include restrictions on exports of goods such as diamonds and depriving Russia from industrial technologies.
The most important thing we can do right now for global peace and security is to support Ukraine in its struggle against Russia, but also to ensure that Russia pays a price for its illegal and unprovoked act of aggression. That's why we've announced new sanctions today.
These last decisions had their echo in Moscow. Russia denounced the kind of these moves. The Russian president said the more sanctions the West hits Russia with, the greater will be the level of cohesion within Russian society.
We see what aggressive external pressure is now being exerted on Russia, on our entire society. Almost the entire economic, military, political and informational arsenal is directed against us.
Apart from Russia and Ukraine, participants should have devoted some time to China. The summit was an occasion as well for G7 leaders to announce that countries will reduce reliance on trade with the world's second biggest economy. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said there was a very clear understanding at the Hiroshima summit among leaders of the group of 7 about China.
There is a very clear understanding here. No one is advocating decoupling, excluding China from global trade that is being pursued by no one, and everyone is of the opinion that China should be able to develop well. At the same time, it's also important also to watch closely that this is embedded in the framework of the international order we have.
On the other hand, the G7 leaders expressed grave concern at Iran's pursuit of its nuclear program, stressing their determination for Tehran not to develop a nuclear weapon.
As Chinese president chaired a high-profile summit in the northwestern city of Xi'an, Xi Jinping on Friday hailed the new era of China-Central Asia relations and announced a slew of proposals and measures to strengthen their cooperation. This comes as Mr. Xi unveiled the grand plan for Central Asia development, from building infrastructure to boosting trade, taking on a new leadership role in the region.
在大家2013年
Back in 2013, I put forward the initiative of jointly building a Silk Road economic belt during my first visit to Central Asia as Chinese president. Over the past decade, China and Central Asian countries have worked closely together to fully revive the Silk Road and actively deepen future-oriented cooperation, steering our relations into a new era.
That too from floods that have devastated Italy's the northern region of Emilia-Romagna has risen to 13. According to Civil Protection Department, much of Emilia remained a red alert zone. Italian authorities said that more than 280 landslides had been recorded, with 200 roads closed and 23 rivers had burst their banks, making it the most severe flooding to affect Italy in a century. A wildfire in the Spanish western region of Extremadura has ravaged as many as 3,007 acres and led to the evacuation of 550 people in the rural areas. The fire is out of control, and weather conditions are making the firefighters work particularly hard. About 200 and 250 the ground fighting the blaze in the areas called Penifro-Nicuado in the Caracas province, near the border with Portugal. Authorities have ordered evacuation of many as 550 people in the village of Cadalso and Robledo de Gata. Closing our news bulletin with the sports events, and the final game of the Under-17 AFCON kicked off with a fantastic start at Nelson Mandela Stadium in Algiers as Morocco Ayet Boudallah scored the opening goal, giving his team an early advantage. However, Senegal quickly responded with a brilliant equalizer by Serigan Fallo Diop, igniting the spirit of the Senegalese supporters. The game reached its peak when Savani scored the second goal, securing the lead for Senegal and claiming the African title here from Algeria. In a recent statement, Patrice Motsepe, the president of the Confederation African Football, CAF, emphasized on the remarkable success of the competitions held in Algeria. He conveyed a deep gratitude to all contributors, with a special acknowledgement for the residents of Annaba and the governor.
Wonderful. For CAF and for African football, we would like to express our gratitude to, where's my brother here? To the leadership, but also to the governor and the state of Annaba, and the support that football receives and the partnership that football has in Algeria with the government, both at state level and at national level. You can see that the competitions we've had here have been very, very good. And the people of Algeria love football. This country has a proud football history. And it's very important for us that we work together to continue to make Algerian football amongst the best in Africa and amongst the best in the world.
Motsepe also highlighted the ongoing communication and engagement with the evaluation committee regarding the selection of a host, and he expressed the desire to elevate the tournament to a level that offers enjoyable football and world-class facilities for spectators.
Very, very, very important. We've asked the independent assessment committee. It has visited the countries that have put in the bid, including Algeria and all the others, Morocco, Benin, Nigeria, Zambia. So it has visited those, and the group will also be visiting those countries that have put in a bid for 2027, because we want to make sure that the process of decision making, it's transparent, it's ethical, it's credible, and the countries that are the most deserving succeed. One other thing I want to say is I want to make sure that when the people in Africa, we had 700 million people watching the AFCON last year. And we want to make sure that when the people in Africa and in the world look at the AFCON in Cote d'Ivoire, and as well as 2025 and 2027, that the facilities and infrastructure are world-class.
And with this, we reach the end of our news bulletin. Thank you ever so much for being with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself. Good night.